Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Affirmation and Motivation for the Creative Artist. Start you off with a quick story. In 2001, I was working on a day job to keep myself alive. I had been running a theater company that never brought in enough money, and I quit that to spend more time writing plays, stories, poems, a series of adaptations of the plays of Molière that also didn't bring in significant money, but I did manage to put together a one-man show that was starting to show potential, but certainly not enough to quit my day job. I'd spent about 4 years doing personal growth work, weekend seminars, self-help books, support groups, trying to find my way to live my dreams, as do we all. At one point, I found myself engaging in an exercise where I plotted out a list of 100 goals, stuff that I might want to achieve in the course of a day, a year, 5, 10 years, a lifetime. Started to analyze just what it was that might be stopping me from fulfilling them. Many of my goals would have demanded that I quit my day job, a day job which I very much hated, to fulfill on these dreams, and yet something was holding me back from taking that action. As I traced those goals and that desire to leave the day job, I came to isolate that thing that was standing in my way. With this job, which came with certain health benefits, I'd actually started to get some long-delayed dental work done, and the dentist had informed me that I'd need to get 2 root canals done. Of course, anyone would put off getting a root canal as long as possible, but in addition to the dread of the pain, my benefits only covered half of the cost of dental surgery, which left me on the hook for, let's say, $1,000, which I didn't have. But every time I looked at my dreams, hopes, desires, there were those root canals standing in my way. And I was starting to make some headway in paying off my credit card, enough so that I could fit that $1,000 expense onto the card. So I bit the bullet, scheduled the procedures, and had the work done. I think this would have been May of 2001. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but I'm sure it was less than a week before I got a call from a school in Wisconsin, I'm out of Chicago, that had produced my adaptation of Tartuffe the previous fall, and they had brought me in to perform my one-man show about Molière as well. They liked me, asked me if I might come up and guest direct another play in the approaching fall. I almost said no, just out of habit, but in that split second I realized that there was no longer anything holding me back. My teeth were fixed, and holding on to that day job was no longer an absolute necessity. I had positioned myself finally in such a way that saying yes was an option. So I said yes, and unburdened myself of that hated job and never looked back. Life since then has been an ongoing, desperate adventure of trying to keep my head above water while doing my own thing, writing, directing, performing, mostly taking my one-man shows around. I'm up to about 10 of them now, all around the country. But here's the big lesson that I took away from that experience. The opportunity to take on that first guest director job only showed up for me once I'd cleared all the interference off of my radar. I have no idea just how many opportunities, just like that, I had turned down that never even registered with me as opportunities, as long as I was chained to that desk job. Once I had cleared the decks, I found that my ear was tuned to actually hear when possibilities such as this arose. I realized that my only limitations were self-imposed. This session is going to touch on certain affirmations that will hopefully point you to some possibilities that may not currently be showing up on your radar as possibilities. So let's get to it. I realize that this workshop got scheduled as an afternoon session, but first of all, I'd like you to imagine that it is first thing in the morning. Maybe you've had your morning glass of water, or you've poured that first cup of coffee, but this activity assumes it is early in the day. Definitely before you've gone looking at any incoming email. You've got the whole day ahead of you, and this is the thing that is going to set you off in the direction you need to do great things. Humans, like computers, are essentially garbage in, garbage out. A lot of us have built up a lifetime of garbage in over the years. Without realizing it, we were programmed by parents, siblings, friends, teachers. Some of that programming was garbage. It may have seemed true at the time, but we also probably conformed with the truth of those nagging daily prompts, making them ever more and more true. What might some of that garbage programming look like? I'm not good enough. I'll never make it in this business. The competition is too tough. I can never catch a lucky break like all those other people do. The artistic life of creating something where there was formerly nothing is dogged by doubters and deniers. There is and will always be someone out there saying, that will never work. That's a crappy idea, or you'll need something else to fall back on. Sometimes those people will be critics working for newspapers who seem to speak with more authority, or who at least have a platform where they can broadcast your perceived deficiency to all the world. That's a heavy load of garbage to carry around. We've been absorbing the drip, drip, drip of that garbage for all the years of our lives, and if we don't make the conscious effort to counter-program that programming, the echoes of all of that will follow us forever. It is not a small thing to work past that persistent voice inside you that screams out, "You're wrong." It takes a lot of psychological health and an ever-renewing psychological growth to look into those dark places and see what it all means, and then to put work that you created before an audience and to let them judge it. To get to that place is a ton of work. It is a ton of work on yourself, and it never ends. Your job as an artist is to be able to replace those "you're wrong" voices, and then to take a stand for that yes again and again and again. So, my biggest project in terms of standing up in front of people, expressing something, whatever that might be as an actor and a writer, is to work on me. I started my process of making a significant change back around 1997, right around when I was introduced to the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. Highly recommended. I made the decision to quit running the theater that I was running to write plays, mostly adaptations of the works of Molière. They did well, eventually getting 17 of them published and produced, collectively hundreds of times. You would think that getting published and produced might silence all those negative voices for once and for all. No, it did not. In 2018, I found the book Die Empty by Todd Henry, and it's that book that eventually inspired the major structure of this workshop. I read Die Empty through 2 or 3 times, underlining stuff, highlighting stuff, and eventually I generated a list of what I call affirmations. Louise Hay has a ton of affirmations in You Can Heal Your Life, and I've incorporated a couple of those into my process, but I drew what started out as maybe 12 pages of affirmations from Die Empty, and I would recite them to myself on a daily basis, gradually trimming away those statements that didn't really light me up in a consistent or a powerful way, eventually getting that list down to just 4 pages. And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly I was not packing up and driving to my next booking the following morning, and I found myself able to generate and maintain a consistent exercise program both for my mind and my body. I actually memorized my 4 pages of affirmations and started reciting them twice each morning, either sitting up in bed with my eyes closed or amid my morning exercises, often while looking in the mirror, or both. So this is about conquering the unproductive inner voice, replacing hindering thoughts with positive affirmations. It is a life's work. It's a practice that we enter into, which gives us permission to assert our right to artistic success. Quite often, this practice brings a new task to the top of my to-do list, and sometimes it gives me the courage to launch into something new. So today, we're going to go through about 70 affirmations, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to discuss how they make you feel. For this pre-recorded version of this workshop, I'll just chat for a bit afterwards about how some of these particular affirmations motivate me. You may well find that in the process of speaking these aloud, and you really do want to do this aloud, you find yourself not believing the words that come out of your mouth. Practicing a creative life demands a parallel practice of positivity, even if that means giving ourselves messages that we don't actually believe, at least at first. But since you may not believe them, you may also want to resist some of these messages. For instance, given that I specialize in one-man shows, I struggled with many of the affirmations about connecting with and working with other people. I would struggle with those about getting out of my comfort zone or about confronting those areas where I might feel intimidation. As such, you may find that one whole chapter does not work for you. This may well point you to the way to those doubting, denying messages that have dug their way especially deeply into your consciousness. And maybe there's where your greatest work lies. Perhaps you, like me, were brought up to not be what my mother used to call too full of yourself. Asserting these affirmations really tests my willingness to be successful. And as I get ready to share these with you, I can feel lots of apprehension creeping in. What an astonishing egomaniac I must be to be able to say these things about myself. Just a reminder, this is the self-talk that I use to encourage myself to rise to my highest vision of myself. And it's only in the process of normalizing this self-talk that vision starts to be accessible. In other words, in order to share this with you, I'm probably going to sound a little too full of myself. And in order for you to feel that experience, you're probably going to sound a little too full of yourself too. But keep in mind, if you aren't going to be full of yourself, who else are you going to be full of? So here's practically how this is going to go. I'm going to speak these aloud, one after another, while projecting them onto the screen. Give yourself the moment to listen to the phrasing of the affirmation, and once I complete speaking it, then repeat it at your end, as if you are talking to yourself. I'll give you a few seconds to absorb whatever you might get out of that, and then I'll move on to the next. You might want to keep a piece of paper close at hand in case some one of these jumps out at you or reminds you of something you've forgotten to accomplish. A few of these are not so much direct statements as they are questions, things to ask yourself every day. I'll try to give you an extra 5 seconds for those that end in question marks so that you might begin to formulate answers. I apologize if doing this collectively, I need to push on just as you're on the edge of a breakthrough. When I do this alone, sometimes my mind will chase down a couple of unexpected pathways for a couple of minutes before bringing myself back on track. Some of those minute-long meditations have led me to major realignments of my to-do list. Don't make yourself wrong for not being ready to think of or to move on to the next thing. You never know when a given idea is going to send you down a really productive rabbit hole, which is why you want that paper handy. Once in a while, you'll see that these affirmations have red lettering and not just yellow lettering. You'll know it when you see it. That red lettering is a place where I filled in the gaps of a question or statement that the book, Die Empty, had inspired me to ask of myself. I filled in that gap with an answer that was personal to me and maybe meaningless to you. I'll try to alert you of what the original question was as we go, but I would encourage you to go ahead and say the full affirmation as printed anyway to see if it fits, but leave yourself the room to find other particular words that feel more impactful and meaningful. A few of these affirmations are quotes. All of these quotes were quoted in Die Empty. I've provided the sources in green. You can look them up. 2 of these affirmations metaphorically use the term naked. I've kept that word in place because it's a little bit startling and a little bit over the top. If and when you encounter that word, if it bothers you in any way, please just replace naked with brave or honest or fearless or unabashed. Finally, I will give you a flyer with all of these affirmations on them at the end. If you're watching this online, you can request a copy of it at my booth, or you can write to me at timmooney@gmail.com. It'll be my little graduation present to you. I don't want you to have that flyer in hand now, because I want you to live in the moment of responding to each one aloud, to tune yourself into just how that one makes you feel. If you're peeking ahead to what's next, it'll make it harder to live in the moment of each one. Also, finally, these affirmations occasionally imply a certain amount of spirituality, if only to assume that we, each of us, have a purpose in life and a reason to get up in the morning. I'm not expressing a commitment to any given religion. Important for me is the ongoing question: if I operate from a place of believing that this is possible, does it support me in the vision for this work? For instance, first thing in the morning, I get myself a glass of water, and sitting up in bed before drinking it, I say to myself, all blessings and love flow through me today. Blessings may come from God, or they may just be blind luck. What's important to me is that they flow through, like the water that I swallow. I absorb it, pass it on. We're going to work our way through as if we're going through the book Die Empty, chapter by chapter. But first, here's a few warm-up affirmations. I often speak these aloud as I'm getting ready to go on stage. I'll speak them, you speak them back as I pause. They love me already. They just want to know that I love them too. They have never seen anything like this before, and they probably never will again. And here's a long one, compiled from several that are borrowed from Louise Hay's book. I'll pause several times to give you time to take it in pieces. I am willing to release the need to be unworthy. I am worthy of the very best in life, and I now lovingly allow myself to accept it. My outer effect of procrastination automatically begins to fade. As I no longer feel the need to delay my good. I also ask two questions. Some people might ask the universe in their daily meditation, what is the meaning of life? That's too specific. Here's what I ask. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? Those two alone can take me down a long, winding path of thought, waiting for what the universe, or perhaps my subconscious, might have to say. I often meditate on these two for several minutes before diving in, but here we go. Die Empty. Preface. Here, we're just setting out, expressing our willingness to take this on as a project. I am willing to step into the heart of uncertainty, find my voice, and commit myself to battles worth fighting. This one will take in several phrases. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is sort of a splendid torch. Which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Chapter 1. Die Empty. I am the only one with my particular combination of passions, skills, and experiences. My greatest opportunities appear in the course of me taking action. Chapter 2, Your Contribution. Here we're exploring just what we have to offer the universe that the universe maybe didn't have before. As I mentioned before, you can replace the operative word in this one with brave, honest, fearless, or unabashed, or whatever word motivates you. I have nothing to lose. I am already naked. There is no reason not to follow my heart. I approach my days with urgency and diligence, forging brilliant work. I create value where it didn't previously exist. Here's one for which I fill in the blank with the answer to the question, what drives me, what gets me up in the morning, what makes life worthwhile? I am driven by love, joy, and compassion. My uncertainty only reminds me that I am engaging in important and valuable work. I leverage all opportunities and resources that show up at my disposal. Chapter 3, The Siren Song of Mediocrity. This chapter is about going beyond half measures, breaking past that place where you normally stop yourself. I practice strategic, intentional, and purposeful risk-taking. By risking going too far, I find out how far I can go. I define the battles I need to fight each day and make meaningful progress. I am always prepared to respond to that person or thing that actually winds up coming my way. That last one really hits home for me. People and things are constantly showing up in your life, waiting for you to clear the decks for them. Once I had those root canals, I happened to be ready for that phone call and respond to that opportunity. You want to be ready for things that show up in your life and recognize them for the joy they might bring or the opportunity they might present. Anyway, here's where I, in this process, generally give myself a brief break. Given that in the last chapter, I affirmed my willingness to define my battles every day, I turn briefly to a little book that I write in every day where I list a series of battles, challenges that I mean to take on that day. If you have your piece of paper at hand, you might have found certain battles showing up in your thinking. Now would be a great moment to capture those. Just write whatever's on your mind. This also helps to focus my thinking as I go on to the remaining 9 chapters of these affirmations. So please, take a moment now, just jot down a couple of things that you mean to take on today. Generally, I'll write some 8 to 10 things down, often things I didn't get done the day before, something that needs to be worked on every day. But for now, just capture a couple of things and we'll move on. I'll shut up and give you another 10 seconds to write. And it just so happens that this next chapter, chapter 4, is called Define Your Battles. You may want to think of what you've written down, or you may be inspired to write more down. Here we go. I persist at the small things that no one else sees. I empty myself of my best work each day and succeed by taking on the right battles. I approach all work with, what can I add? What work am I willing to suffer for today? I am swept up by those problems that I am uniquely equipped to tackle. My mission is to blow people away. I take one small step each day on those things I know I should be doing. Chapter 5, Be Fiercely Curious. This is one of my favorite chapters, kind of elegant in its simplicity. I take a moment each day to simply bring forth what I am and might be. From within my sacred place, something will happen. What is this project aspiring to become? I can think anything. Chapter 6, Step Out of Your Comfort Zone. Here's the chapter that launches you into the hard stuff, or maybe it's the exciting stuff that only looks hard when you're putting off starting it. Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul and then walks grinning in the funeral. I audaciously put myself on the line. I act before I have the chance to talk myself out of it. My default position is yes. I figure out how along the way. For this next one, you can fill in any number that you want, or you can change that number every day to something that will inspire you. You'll know it when you hear it. At the age of 100, I will be proud of the decisions that I make today. I don't follow maps. I draw them. I define the ground that I intend to take. My friends and followers rally to my side. I do a little more today than I did yesterday. How old will I be in 5 years if I don't tackle this? What good have I created today? What good shall I create this day? I choose growth over safety and empty myself of my best work. Chapter 7, Know Yourself. Here's a really challenging chapter. Challenging that it really demands that you assert yourself over all of those voices that are telling you no, or stop being so full of yourself. I am worth more than what I create. Intimidation is my clearest sign for where I need to go next. For this next one, you can fill in the words with anything that helps you decide just how you intend to respond to life's challenges. What qualities of humanity do you intend to bring to the table? Here's mine. I respond with empathy, love, and relentless drive. And with this one, you want to fill in the blanks with what you want to be, what you want to create for yourself, and how you want the world to respond to you. I'm a legit expert. I make career breakthroughs on a daily basis. People fight to get me. I always add more energy than I take away. Here's another fill in the blank, answering the question, what qualities do I want to bring to the table? I focus on bringing love, joy, and infinite possibility. And again, on this one, you can replace the operative word with bravely, honestly, fearlessly, unabashedly. I step naked into uncharted territory, moving forward in the face of uncertainty. Chapter 8, Be confidently adaptable. Here's a quick two-statement chapter to remind you of how you intend to respond. My confidence and adaptability throw me into my most important work. And with this one, fill in what qualities you want to bring to everything you do. I add enthusiasm and understanding to everything I touch. Chapter 9, Finding Your Voice. I don't have to wait for permission from anyone to knock it out of the park. I step out into the light, unafraid to take myself seriously. My future self has left me lighted arrows in the dark, pointing my way. My most obvious ideas are often deeply profound to others. Chapter 10, Stay Connected. Even a one-man show cannot happen alone. People are necessary at each step along the way. Here's to being ready to whatever or whomever shows up in your life. The world is simply throbbing with rich treasures, beautiful souls, and interesting people. My genuine connections keep me open and on track. What can I offer? I find people I trust and respect. I share my goals, ambitions, fears, and actions, kindling urgency. I ask others about their risks. I learn what I know by teaching it to others. Chapter 11, Live Empty. How can I surprise someone with generosity, encouragement, or service today? Today's the day. I am grateful for my life. For this next one, what is the very simplest way to look at the things that you create in the world? Here's mine. I turn ideas into words, and words into performance. Last chapter, chapter 12, Forward. I am paid for what I do by who I get to become. What does life expect of me? I measure my work by my daily progress. I expect the best while actively working to bring it about. My courage to continue is what counts. Fail more. I measure my life by what I manage to give, not receive. I spend my life building a body of work I am proud of. Today is all that I have. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some particular ones that really move me. I'll point out one or two at the most from each chapter. These are the ones that have been jumping out at me lately. I often find that I go through phases in which different affirmations grab me in different ways. From chapter 1, Die Empty. I am the only one with my particular combination of passions, skills, and experiences. This one is kind of beautiful in its simplicity. It seems self-evident, of course. Other people may match you or exceed you in any one of these, passion, skill, experience. But taken together, it is impossible for anyone to match you, which means that your artistic output, the result of those passions, skills, experiences, is unique to you. No one else can match that particular thing that you might come up with. It is your fingerprint. Withholding that unique contribution from the world means that that particular thing that you might create will never exist. Chapter 2, Your Contribution. My uncertainty only reminds me that I am engaging in important and valuable work. I sometimes change that one up a little bit to say important and meaningful work, whatever feels right to you. I like that this one turns our fears and doubts on their head. It is the actual uncertainty, that thing that usually stops us and turns us away from action, that should be the very thing that propels us forward, reminding us that we are, in fact, on track, perhaps creating something that has never been created before. After all, if we were certain in advance that it would work, that knowledge would only be the result of something very similar that preceded it. The fact of our uncertainty reminds us that we are plowing new ground. Chapter 3, The Siren Song of Mediocrity. I'm always prepared to respond to that person or thing that actually winds up coming my way. The guest artist gig, I think we quite often overlook opportunity when it shows up in our lives, and it often shows up for us as burden. Perhaps your next opportunity is a new chance for a booking that will demand a series of emails back and forth, or a grant program, which will demand applications. It might be a script request or a festival application. How many times do I trace my way back over old emails to find that I've left an opportunity sitting unexplored? How often do they not even register as opportunities? We need to notice those things that show up in our lives, which often may mean throwing out our plans. And before you tell me that things don't show up in your life, let me assure you that they do. Things show up for all of us. Quite often, they just don't look like the things that we thought we were looking for. Chapter 4, Define Your Battles. What work am I willing to suffer for today? All of the Define My Battles affirmations really get me to look at my plans for the day in a new way, but this one, what work am I willing to suffer for today, seems to launch me into my most challenging work, the stuff that I might otherwise be most likely to put off, if only out of a natural aversion for suffering. But there are things worth suffering for, which means that this one may launch us into our greatest challenges and thereby perhaps our most valuable accomplishments. More often than not, at least over the course of the past month, as I've been working on a new one-man play, I look at this one and I am reminded of the endless memorization that I have waiting for me to attack. Chapter 5, Be Fiercely Curious. What is this project aspiring to become? This one pops for me as The very process of asking the question immediately brings a project to mind, and in light of that project, 1, 2, or 3 words of description come into focus about just what that project might want to create for an audience or for the world. I think the particular trick that makes it pop is that it's not about what I want to make out of this project. It implies, if the project had a mind, a body, or a soul, what would it be wanting for itself? It reframes the question of how I approach it. Sometimes the answer is simply hilarious or mind-blowing, but sometimes it's much more particular. What does Romeo and Juliet want to become? Terrifying? Hilarious? Erotic? All 3? Chapter 6. Step out of your comfort zone. First, just a word about 2 of these. At the age of 100, and how old will I be in 5 years if I don't tackle this? I actually change the numbers on these affirmations every day. I work my way through every age between my current age and 100 and choose that number of years between now and then to compute how old I will be in X years if it helps me remind myself that I will one day, hopefully, be that old, and what I do today impacts how I will feel then. And what is that thing? Learning a foreign language, learning to play the piano, getting out from under your parents' expectations. You get to decide just what your dreams are and just when you want to get around to going after them. I don't follow maps, I draw them. At first, this affirmation threw me. How can I draw maps? I don't know the lay of the land. I don't know where all of this is going. At first, I felt hopelessness around this, but then I looked at just how my work tends to proceed and how maps get made. Maps evolve and improve as the territory gets explored. We are all exploring the realm of our artistry, and as we trace over the landscape back and forth, we learn paths, create the twists and turns. We don't create them out of whole cloth. We learn the terrain and get better at crossing the barriers that arise. If somebody else has drawn that map and laid out the path, maybe it's not your path. But look at the affirmations that follow. I draw the maps, then I define the ground that I intend to take. And then my friends and followers rally to my side. The reason they're able to rally to my side is because they know where to find me, because I've now got a map. Chapter 7. Know yourself. Intimidation is my clearest sign for where I need to go next. I really resisted this one. I'm still resisting it because intimidation is always there. And we take that intimidation on to a lesser or greater degree. When we take it on to a lesser degree, we find ourselves always steering away from our challenges. Sometimes we need to be willing to turn toward danger or we'll never get anywhere. And sometimes that might just mean writing that email, making that phone call that we've been putting off. And sometimes that will launch us to a new opening. And when I do go towards that intimidation, how do I approach it? With the following affirmation. I respond with empathy, love, and relentless drive. When I put my mind towards bringing those qualities to those challenges I face, then they don't seem as intimidating. Chapter 9, Finding Your Voice. My most obvious ideas are often deeply profound to others. As a writer, I'm always asking myself whether I'm actually adding anything new to the conversation. Quite often, I have a point of view and just assume that everybody else has that same perspective already. They already know this. How can I possibly be covering new ground here? Sometimes we have to realize that our minds have taken turn after turn after turn through a maze of choices and decisions, sometimes over the course of 40 years or more, to bring ourselves to express something that may well be extremely profound, even while it might seem very simple. And often it's not just a single decision or idea, but a combination of one idea on top of another and another in an endless series that takes us to someplace unique, unexplored, profound. But our natural impulse to look at a given idea and say, that's nothing new or that's nothing special, often prevents us from bringing an audience to a renewed realization and awareness. Chapter 10. Stay connected. My genuine connections keep me open and on track. As I've mentioned, my impulse is to work alone and forge my way through one-person shows and to not be dependent on anyone else to create the work that I do. And it feels entirely foreign to me to seek and secure support, to lean on someone else, to manage the business, to generate social media, to donate to the cause, to feed me ideas, to listen to my struggles, to remind me of who I am. None of us live in a vacuum, and staying connected to people, remember, the world is simply throbbing with rich treasures, beautiful souls, and interesting people. Gives relevance to our work. Chapter 11, Live Empty. How can I surprise someone with generosity, encouragement, or service today? These three elements seem to combine in a magical way. Often, I don't feel like I have anything to offer to other people. I don't have much money very often, so my ability to chip into somebody's Patreon campaign may be limited. But sometimes that impulse of generosity is a generosity of spirit, a word or a paragraph of encouragement, a ride from the airport, an expression of love. Every day with every person, we have options to kick in, put something good into the space that lies between ourselves and other beings. Chapter 12, Forward. I am paid for what I do by who I get to become. I grew up in a family that had an elevated consciousness about earnings, salaries. I grew up with expectations about how much I needed to be earning in order for my life to have validity. I spent a lifetime getting past all of that. It's almost impossible to shake loose of that value measurement. But we will not be remembered by how much money we make. We may not make a lot of money, but in the process of sharing who we are and what we do with the world at large, we create a being that generates life beyond the edges of our own. And that's where I'd like to leave this conversation. As human beings, we all want to live beyond our edges, beyond the limits of our skin, to reach to some piece of the eternal. Once you have self-awareness, you want to live beyond the boundaries of self. And as creative artists, one of the ways we have chosen to fulfill that is through good works, leaving behind a legacy of a world that we have changed, and through creative expression, saying, doing, expressing something that no one else could create or do. That's what lights me up every day and finds me getting out of bed to take on the next thing. I hope this helps you to find that special reason for you. Finally, having been through all of these questions and affirmations, let me return and leave you with two questions that we started with. Ask yourself if your answers to those two questions are any different now than when we started out. And if they are, then maybe this is a healthy, ongoing exploration for you. Number one, what do I need to know? Number two, what do I need to do? Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Tim Mooney from the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater. You can find me at my booth this week, a lot of the time. You can also catch me performing my one-man show, Breakneck Comedy of Errors, Friday night at 10 p.m. In the place where the Fringe Festival is happening. It's a ballroom, I think. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have a great conference. I look forward to seeing you around. And remember, you can drop by my booth to pick up a copy of this list of affirmations, or you can just email me, timmooney@gmail.com, and I'll pop one into the mail to you. Thanks a lot. So long.